Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlelady from Minnesota for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the American people, if you woke up this morning not knowing who to blame for this shutdown, you will go to bed tonight with no doubt. It is House Republicans and Speaker Johnson. I mean, what the hell are you guys doing? This is nuts. This is not complicated, Mr. Speaker. There is a bill right now passed unanimously by the Republican-controlled Senate to end this shutdown. A bill to fund FEMA, TSA, the Coast Guard, and other lawful agencies in DHS. That bill was unanimously passed and was orchestrated by Republicans who control the United States Congress. You control the House, you control the Senate, you control the White House, you control everything. Republican leader John Thune was the one who wrote it, scheduled it, offered it. A Republican was presiding over the Senate floor when the bill came up, and not a single senator, including not a single Republican senator, objected to moving this bill forward. Not a single one. That bill was sent to us today. And what did Speaker Mike Johnson do? He said no. He said, let's keep those airport lines long. He said, let's not pay TSA or FEMA or the Coast Guard or CISA. Why? Why? Because he'd rather bow down to a handful of batshit crazy right-wing lunatics who don't care about who they hurt and who are demanding even more money for ICE, an agency that is already has a $75 billion slush fund. $75 billion. Oh my God. That's more money than almost every nation on earth spends on their entire military budget per year. So, in what world does ICE need more money? Why would we give more money to an agency that a federal judge says has violated more judicial orders this year, let me quote, than some agencies have violated in their entire existence, end quote. We've seen ICE and CBP agents break into homes without warrants. I thought you guys cared about civil liberties. Arresting and detaining American citizens, publicly executing people on the street, and none of you are moved by that? Why the hell would we give them more money without real reforms? All we are saying is that we should fund agencies that actually protect the public and keep this country running. The Senate passed a bill that does just that. It is ready for House floor action. We could end this shutdown for good tonight if Speaker Johnson would just put it on the floor. There's no question it would pass with massive, sweeping bipartisan support. I've talked to so many of you who told me you support what the Republican Senate did. But Speaker Johnson refuses to do that. I swear, he's actually doing everything, and I mean everything, in his power to prevent reopening DHS tonight. Republican leadership has even gone so far as to change the very definition of time itself. They had to rig the rules to pretend today is tomorrow so they could jam this garbage CR through faster and then get out of town. This CR, Mr. Speaker, is a non-starter. It is dead on arrival in the Senate. And even some House Republicans have already acknowledged that this plan, to quote them, is stupid. And you know it's dead on arrival in the Senate. Speaker Johnson needs to grow a freaking spine. And we need some adult leadership in this House. Put the Senate bill on the floor. Let us pass it with a large majority of House votes, and let us end this Republican shutdown now. I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Members are reminded to respectfully avoid from using profanity on the floor. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from the other side of the aisle can yell and swear all he wants, but the reality is this CR is a common sense solution to fund critical needs and to continue the discussion. And I would like to yield 2 minutes to my rules colleague from Georgia.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, I'd like to tell you what's true about what Mr. McGovern said. It is true that last night after midnight, the Republican Majority Leader introduced a piece of legislation on the floor of the House of Representatives. Floor of the Senate, I apologize. And it is true that no Republican senator objected to that. And I can tell you, I'm very disappointed in the Republican leader and in the Republican Party over there for not objecting to it. But I want to read the American citizens what is written in the bill, because I want you to understand why we cannot, and it is not in your best interest as American citizens for us to accept the language that the Senate sent over here. And while this is boring, I do think the words on the sheet of paper matter, and you need to understand the consequences of accepting the language. Section 4, explanatory statement. The explanatory statement regarding this act, printed in the House section of the Congressional Record on or about January 22, 2026, and submitted by the Chair of the Committee on Appropriations of the House, shall have the same effect with respect to the allocation of funds and implementation of this act as if it were a joint explanatory statement of a committee of conference, except that all contents printed under the heading U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, that's what they want you to think it's about, U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and border security operations. Border security operations under the heading U.S. Customs and Border Protection shall have no force or effect for purpose of this act, an amount specified in the final bill column under the subheading Border Security Operations, not just ICE, but Border Security Operations under this heading, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and under the heading U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and the Department of Homeland Security Act of 2026 table shall all be zero. That is what you're demanding, is that we zero out Customs and Border Protection so that the border can be open the way you want it to be open, the way you did it under Joe Biden. I'm disappointed in the Republican leader, and I'm disappointed in the Republicans in the Senate for not objecting to this madness.
I reserve.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, and let us just restate for the record that ICE and CBP have billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. Years of funding. You can't bring yourself to help feed hungry children or make child care more affordable or health care more affordable, but you have no problem with giving ICE, an agency that cannot follow the law, billions and billions of dollars. Shame on you. Your priorities are all screwed up. Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Menifee.
I would like to remind members on both sides of the aisle to direct comments to the chair. The gentleman is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today representing the people of Houston, Texas, asking House Republicans to put for a vote the deal that was agreed to in the Senate that would fully fund FEMA, the Coast Guard, as well as TSA. And Houston has a unique impact in all of this. We're home to Bush Intercontinental Airport, right in my district, which has seen some of the longest wait times in the entire nation, has had some of the highest TSA call-out rates in the entire nation. We're also home to a U.S. Coast Guard base, Sector Houston-Galveston, that has more than 1,500 personnel, folks who are not going to be receiving paychecks if we don't agree to this deal. But we're also one of the most disaster-prone places in the entire country. We've had 500-year storm after storm, flood after flood, where people have lost their property, their dignity, and in many instances, their lives. We rely on FEMA. We rely on FEMA workers. We need this deal to happen. And the deal is already right here for the taking. We've already seen Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats have agreed on a clean funding bill that would fully fund these agencies, would benefit all of the American people, but particularly the folks in Houston, Texas. I'm calling on my colleagues in the House of Representatives, my Republican colleagues, Speaker Johnson, put this deal forward for a vote give the American people what they want, and that is a fully funded TSA, Coast Guard, and FEMA. Thank you. I yield back.
And yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the representative from Georgia.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the Department of Homeland Security continuing resolution that pays all of our brave Homeland defenders and fully funds all of DHS, including ICE and CBP. For over 40 days, my Democrat colleagues have held our national security hostage to force their reckless open border and pro-illegal alien agenda on the American people. Honestly, no one is surprised by this reckless stunt, because just a few short weeks ago in this very chamber, these radical Democrats refused to stand for President Trump's simple statement that the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. They showed their true colors then, and they're continuing to show them right now. Upholding immigration laws, securing our borders, and deporting illegal aliens is exactly what the American people voted for. We wanted to prevent more avoidable tragedies like the horrific murders of Laken Riley and Sheridan Gorman. Democrats want to protect these monsters committing these crimes. It's as simple as that. You're either with the American citizens who you swore an oath to serve, or you're with the illegal aliens that shouldn't be here in the first place. That's why the Senate bill was dead on arrival. Passed in the dead of night by a voice vote, the Senate's DHS funding bill would defund ICE and the Border Patrol, further undermining the very agencies tasked with protecting our homeland. House Republicans rejected this terrible precedent, as we will not allow the radical Democrats' un-American, open-border, illegal foreigner-first agenda to destroy our country or dictate the appropriations process. I urge my colleagues to put the American people first by supporting this DHS 60-day continuing resolution. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, this bill does not defund ICE. There's like a bazillion dollars in the big ugly bill, so that's just a lie. And the gentleman talked about what happened in this chamber. I'll tell you something that happened in this chamber. The President of the United States sent an angry mob here to attack our democracy. And that gentleman said it was a normal tourist visit. I won't ever forget that. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, the Democratic leader, a real leader, Mr. Jeffries.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my distinguished colleague, the top Democrat on the Rules Committee, Jim McGovern, for yielding and for his leadership. I rise today in strong opposition to this partisan political stunt that Republicans have brought to the floor, masquerading as legitimate legislation. There's a bipartisan bill that, if brought to the floor today, can end the 42-day Trump Republican shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. But Republicans have concluded that they would rather continue to force TSA agents to work without pay, inconvenience millions of Americans all across the country, and create chaos at airports. Why is this happening? It's because Republicans have chosen to continue to authorize spending billions of taxpayer dollars to brutalize or kill American citizens, like Renee Nicole Good or Alex Preddy, or to violently target law-abiding immigrant families. Mr. Speaker, we believe that immigration enforcement in this country should be fair, just, and humane. That's not what's happening right now. ICE is out of control. The American people know it, which is why changes need to be made that are bold, meaningful, dramatic, transformational, and common sense at the same period of time. Instead, Republicans have chosen to double and triple down on their extremism, on their brutality, and on their violence that has been unleashed on everyday Americans all across the country. Now, there's a bipartisan bill sent over from the Senate. Every single Senate Democrat, every single Senate Republican supported that legislation. It would reopen the TSA, reopen the FEMA, reopen the Coast Guard, reopen the ability for our cybersecurity professionals to do their job, while at the same time allowing for discussions, tough negotiations to continue. On one side of that negotiations are my Republican colleagues who want to continue to spend taxpayer dollars to brutalize and kill American citizens, unleashing masked, untrained ICE agents, in some cases storming homes of everyday Americans, ripping them out of their beds in the middle of the night, ripping children away from their families, detaining people in inhumane conditions, refusing to allow state and local authorities to investigate ICE violence and brutality in ways that will be designed to bring about accountability. This debate, at the end of the day, is really all about, do you want to compel ICE to conduct themselves like every other cop, police officer, or law enforcement agency in the country, or do you want to continue to spend billions of taxpayer dollars to violently target American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families? We choose the American way, fair, just, and humane. Now, many of my Republican colleagues have come to the floor to suggest that this legislation is about defunding ICE. That's a stone-cold lie, because we know that in the Republican one big ugly bill, which ripped away Medicaid from 14 million Americans, the largest cut, almost $1 trillion, to Medicaid in American history. At the same period of time, extremist Republicans, in their one big ugly bill, enacted a $186 billion cut to nutritional assistance, literally ripped food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans. And why did Republicans do that in their one big ugly bill? In part, to provide their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks that they did not need and did not deserve. And at the same period of time, give the Department of Homeland Security $191 billion. Watch this. $75 billion in a slush fund to ICE. Is that defunding? No, the one big ugly bill defunded Medicaid. It defunded nutritional assistance for everyday Americans. It defunded some affordable housing programs. It defunded the ability for everyday Americans who are struggling under Republican policies to actually afford their utility bills. That was the defunding that has taken place in this chamber during this Congress. Defunding ICE. How do you stand up here as Republicans and say that to the American people with a straight face when you gave ICE a $75 billion slush fund, and then turned around and gave CBP a $65 billion slush fund in the same one big ugly bill? The reality is that we can end this shutdown, this 42-day extreme Trump Republican shutdown. Today, Republicans had the courage and the patriotism to actually bring a bipartisan Senate-passed bill to the floor, which would pass this chamber with Democratic and Republican votes. Maybe not the extremists, but it would pass with Democratic and Republican votes. Mike Johnson has chosen to say no to a bipartisan bill so he could say yes to continuing to force TSA agents to work without pay. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan bill so he could say yes to continuing to inconvenience millions of the American people across the country. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan bill so House Republicans could say yes to chaos at airports all across the country. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan bill so House Republicans can continue to say yes to ICE brutality. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan Senate-passed bill so House Republicans could continue to say yes to ICE violence. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan Senate-passed bill so House Republicans could continue to say yes to the corruption that we've seen at the Department of Homeland Security. Mike Johnson has said no to a bipartisan Senate-passed bill that would reopen the Department of Homeland Security so House Republicans could say yes to the Freedom Caucus, which is clearly driving the train here. And it was amazing to me that at the Rules Committee, you had some Republican members try to lecture America about Article 1 and separate and co-equal branches of government. Really? You want to talk about the House and the Senate? I'm not interested in that debate. Let's talk about the difference between Article 1 and Article 2. Because the framers of this Constitution designed the Article 1 branch, the Congress, to be the first amongst equals. That's not how House Republicans have been acting from the very beginning of this Congress. Instead, House Republicans running around this town acting like nothing more than a reckless rubber stamp to Donald Trump's extreme agenda. And that's what's happening right now. Because what House Republicans want to do is to continue to fund Donald Trump's violent, extreme mass deportation machine that has resulted in the death of at least 3 American citizens. Lecture us about Article 1 and Article 2. You've got to be kidding. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to continue to speak truth to power on this floor as a duly elected member. And the more you stand, the longer I'll speak. And so, our view is very clear. We can reopen this government today if you bring to the House floor a bipartisan Senate-passed bill today. Because as Democrats, we believe that immigration enforcement in this country should be fair, it should be just, and it should be humane. Donald Trump promised to target violent felons who are here illegally. That's what Republicans promised. You've broken your word. It's American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families who are being targeted violently by untrained and masked ICE agents. Our position is pretty clear. Let's pay TSA. Let's fund FEMA. Let's fund the Coast Guard. Let's fund our cybersecurity professionals. Stop holding the American people hostage to an extreme right-wing agenda. Taxpayer dollars should be spent to make life more affordable for the American people. That's what Democrats will continue to focus on. In an environment where life has become more expensive under the extreme policies that President Trump and House Republicans continue to jam down the throats of the American people. The Trump tariffs, increasing costs on everyday Americans by millions of dollars in totality, thousands of dollars per year for everyday Americans as a family. House Republicans have refused, Senate Republicans refused, Donald Trump refused to do anything to make life more affordable. Housing costs are out of control. Healthcare costs are out of control. Grocery bills are out of control. Gas prices are out of control because Republicans have decided to get us into a reckless war of choice in the Middle East, spending billions of dollars to drop bombs in Iran. Mr. Speaker, we're here dealing with a partisan spending bill that the Senate has already indicated is dead on arrival. And so Republicans have taken the decision to own this shutdown decisively. There is no doubt, as Ranking Member Jim McGovern stated earlier, there is no doubt as to why we are still facing a shutdown that is inflicting pain and chaos and uncertainty on the American people. So I rise in strong opposition to this so-called spending bill, dead on arrival, that will do nothing, accomplish nothing other than continuing the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security and the chaos that Republicans have unleashed in airports all across America. House Democrats are going to continue to fight for what is right. We're going to continue to fight to lower the high cost of living, fix our broken health care system, clean up corruption, stop this reckless war of choice in the Middle East, get ICE under control, pay TSA, end the chaos at these airports, and end this national nightmare that Donald Trump and Republicans are inflicting upon the American people. Vote no against this partisan political stunt. Let's say yes instead to a bipartisan bill that would reopen the Department of Homeland Security, end the chaos at airports, and stop the inconvenience of the American people. I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman yields back. Just to clarify to the gentleman, I was not standing to shorten your speech. I understand you can speak as long as you would like to. The House was not in order, and I was simply trying to bring it back into order for you. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the chair of the Rules Committee, the representative from North Carolina.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlewoman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, our colleague who says they want us to bring down the high cost of living is like the arsonist who sets the fire and then comes out to help put it out. Mr. Speaker, the Senate's funding proposal is not worth the paper it's printed on. Frankly, it'd be better used as kindling in a fireplace. I said it in the Rules Committee, I'll say it again here on the floor. We'll be darned if we go down the road of undercutting the progress that our Republican majorities and President Trump have made in securing the border. A record low of encounters of illegal aliens, a dramatic reduction in fentanyl aliens, a dramatic reduction in fentanyl trafficking, a return to law and order that was robbed from the American people for 4 years under the previous administration. Those are the things that would be sacrificed if we passed the Senate's proposal that is nowhere near being up to scratch. The People's House will not bend itself into submission by acquiescing. And let me make one other point very clear, Mr. Speaker. Our Democrat colleagues love to dust off the same withered line that Republicans are the ones responsible for DHS being shut down because we control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. If we had $1 for every time they trotted out that line, DHS could be funded multiple times over. What Democrats never acknowledge is that the Senate operates under an entirely different set of procedural and vote thresholds than the House. But the American people aren't fooled. They're far smarter than the Democrats believe they are. As time goes on, Mr. Speaker, one thing becomes clearer and clearer. Democrats are the carnival barkers for narratives that the American people aren't interested in buying. But that's their prerogative. Republicans, meanwhile, are the ones who are governing and will continue to do so by passing this rule and the underlying continuing resolution. Our 8-week CR will afford us the time to deliberate, build consensus, and advance a solution that is far greater than the Senate's jerry-built proposal, all while ensuring the 100,000-plus DHS employees get paid. I urge support for the rule and the underlying measure, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I just would like to respond by saying the American people know what's going on with the Republicans, and I trust their wisdom. And that's why you are the most unpopular party in the country, and the president's popularity has never been lower. They can't afford you. You don't know how to govern. In fact, if the American people could, they would sue the Republicans for malpractice. Everything is going up. Gas prices are up. Housing is up. Groceries are up. Everything is up. They can't afford you. Enough of this. Enough of this. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Massachusetts, our Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, Speaker Mike Johnson said that November will be a choice between common sense and crazy. And today, he's proven himself right. This is a battle between common sense and crazy. On the one side, we have a bipartisan bill to reopen TSA, reopen the Coast Guard while we are at war, reopen FEMA ahead of hurricane season, reopen our cybersecurity agency before the FBI gets hacked again, reopen all the agencies that actually keep people safe. That's common sense. That's what Democrats are advocating for. Crazy is wanting to keep all that shut down, all of it, so that masked ICE agents can keep kicking down doors without warrants, so they can keep committing acts of terror in our communities. House Republicans had the easiest possible path to put people first. Vote for a bill that every Senate Republican voted for this morning. All they had to do was get out of the way, and they couldn't even bring themselves to do it. This is a battle between common sense and crazy, and the American people know which side the Republicans are on, and it's not the side of the people of this country. I yield back.
Lady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am honored to yield 1 minute to the true leader, the majority leader from Louisiana.
The distinguished gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank my friend from Minnesota for yielding and all the applause coming from the other side. Look, Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this important bill to fund fully the Department of Homeland Security. You know, we've done this time and time again, at least in the House. This will mark tonight the 4th time that the House has voted to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. And I know there's been a lot of back and forth in the Senate, and then at 3 in the morning, senators just decided, well, throw in the towel and maybe see what they can cobble together to get out of town. But, Mr. Speaker, we've got a job to do. Our job is to protect the American people, to do our job to keep them safe, and that's why we created this department. Not some of the department, not just pieces of the department, but the entire Department of Homeland Security. And I know the other side over and over again has wanted to go back to open borders. We're not going to go back to open borders. The American people don't want us to go back to open borders. They've seen the peril of that. We also, Mr. Speaker, cannot go back to a September 10th mentality, a pre-September 11th mentality where you just ignore the signs of the bad things that are happening in this country. We changed that after September 11th, and we vowed never forget, never let it happen again. And yet here we are. Some members want to get in a time machine, and they want to go back to another day where maybe America didn't have any attacks. Well, how about we go back in a time machine and listen to the Democrat leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I'll read a quote from Hakeem Jeffries, and I quote, "We are here today to do a single job, and that should be to fund fully the Department of Homeland Security. Anything else is an abdication of our responsibility. Anything else is an act of legislative malpractice. We're playing political games at a time when the safety and the security of the American people is being threatened." That was in 2015, Hakeem Jeffries. Now, what's happened between now and then? Well, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, this is not your father's Democrat Party anymore. You've seen how far the radical, crazy elements of the party have taken over and tried to bring it to this socialist mentality, this open borders mentality, this defund the police mentality. And yes, this bill absolutely defunds the police. You've got under this bill that came over from the Senate, even when you count in the working families tax cut that every Democrat voted against, even when you count that in, 6,700 people at the Department of Homeland Security will be defunded. That's right, defunded. Now, the American people rejected the defund the police movement. Just because it happened in the Senate at 3 in the morning doesn't mean nobody heard it. We did. We didn't just hear it, we read the bill. And we said, no, Mr. Speaker, that is not the responsible thing to do for this country. This country's counting on us. And by the way, it's at a time when we're at a heightened level of threats. If you're wondering what that heightened level is, I know there's some people that just want to go after police all the time. Why don't we just read a couple of the names that the other side doesn't want to read? Richard Williams, Mr. Speaker, 83-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran who was randomly shoved into a subway tracks by an illegal alien from Honduras, just died this week. We've all heard of Sheridan Gorman. Maybe not enough people, Mr. Speaker, have heard of Sheridan Gorman, but we're going to say her name again. A beautiful 18-year-old young girl from Loyola University in Chicago, a student who had the world before her, shot to death by, yes, an illegal alien from Venezuela who came over here under President Biden's open borders that the other side wants to take us back to. We are not going to do that. That surely is not the responsible thing to do. Stephanie Minter, a 41-year-old mother from Virginia, randomly stabbed to death by an illegal, yes, with a lengthy rap sheet with more than 30 prior charges. How many more of these do we have to have before some people will say, okay, maybe we need to fund this department? I don't think there's an endless list before they just don't want to offend their radical base, Mr. Speaker. That's really who they're afraid of. Obviously, if they were concerned about all these Americans over and over and over again, this is just in the last month, who have been killed by people here illegally, and they're going to go and defund almost 7,000 people at the department? That's insane. And oh, by the way, have we talked about the multiple terrorist attacks that have happened, yes, here on our homeland, not in foreign soil, here on our homeland just in the last month? And they want to partially defund this agency. With this bill and the working families tax cut, still over 10% of the whole agency will be defunded at a time when we're at a heightened terrorist threat. Could you imagine if you had a terrorist outside of your house and somebody said, well, we'll let you lock the front door, but we don't have time to lock the back door? You'd think that was crazy. You'd lock the front door, the back door, the windows, and everything else, and you'd go get your shotgun. But yet they want to defund this agency and make our country vulnerable, make Americans less safe. I'm not going to have anything to do with that, Mr. Speaker. I want to fund the whole department. That's what this bill does. It pays everybody, pays the TSA agents as they should be, as Democrats have voted time and time again to not pay. We pay them. And it's not long-term. I wish it was. We've sent them a long-term bill. This is for a few months. We at least have time to keep negotiating our differences. These are big differences, but these are dangerous times in America. This is not the time to defund the police, to defund the Department of Homeland Security at any level. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge everybody, vote for this bill. Let's do our job. We are here doing the right thing to keep America safe. Urge adoption, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me just say I disagree with the true leader of the Republican Party, who I thought was Mike Johnson, but apparently the gentlelady just corrected us. It's not. But let me just say the issue for us, first let me just say ICE is being funded. Stop the BS. Stop the misinformation that somehow ICE is not being funded. $85 billion. That's what they have. Their normal budget is $10 billion a year. It's $85 billion. Only Republicans would say that somehow that's not enough, that they're being defunded. And the reason why we have concern and why we're demanding reforms, I'll tell you why. Because ICE is terrorizing communities and attacking people, including U.S. citizens. You all should care about that. You should care about that. You know, a U.S. citizen went on his lunch break and masked federal agents detained him in a chokehold. In Miami, federal agents ripped a woman from her car as she screamed that she was a U.S. citizen. ICE agents in Minnesota ate lunch at a small-town Mexican restaurant. When they were done enjoying their meal, they detained the workers who served them. In California, a U.S. citizen on his way to work at a food bank pulled over to warn federal agents that they should wrap up their stop of another individual before school-aged children gathered for the bus. Moments later, an ICE officer shot him in the back. You said nothing about that. In Chicago, ICE agents stormed an apartment complex by helicopters as families slept and deployed chemical agents near a public school. Nothing from your side. In Minnesota, ICE agents shot and killed Renee Good, a U.S. citizen, after she complied with agents' orders to move her vehicle away from the protest. In Minnesota, 2 ICE agents shot and killed Alex Preddy, a U.S. citizen and a nurse, as he was exercising his constitutional rights. Mr. Speaker, ICE is wreaking havoc on people all across this country, trampling over their constitutional rights. And there was a time when you cared about the Constitution. U.S. citizens across this country are carrying their passports out of fear of being detained without cause. There are reports of Native Americans who are U.S. citizens being detained by ICE. 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025. 32! It was ICE's deadliest year in 2 decades. And in just the first 9 months of Trump's second term, over 170 U.S. citizens were detained by ICE. Nearly 20 were children. 2 dozen were held without being able to call a lawyer or their families. I mean, citizens dragged, tackled, beaten, tased. I mean, I reserve my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Members from both sides of the aisle are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. The gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Fishbach, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am happy to yield 2 minutes to the chair of the Judiciary Committee, the representative from Ohio.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the madam for yielding. It's all by design. It's all planned. For 4 years, it was a wide open border. 8 to 10 million people entered this country. And then when they got here, left-wing politicians all across the country said, we're going to provide sanctuary for these 8 to 10 million people who illegally came into the country. 18 cities, 11 states, 3 counties, and the District of Columbia, representing almost a third of the population of this nation. They said, we will give sanctuary. We're going to tell local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement when it comes to the enforcement of federal law. And what does that mean in practice? Illegal migrant commits another crime, is in jail, in a detention center. ICE sends a detainer there, said, will you let us know if you're going to let this guy out? And 17,864 times last year, they said, no, we won't work with you. Go get him on the street. And then what happens then? ICE goes out on the street to get him, and the left-wing agitators on the street spit on him, dox him, track him, harass him, swear at him, and now what do the Democrats want to do? Not pay him. It's all by design. That's their plan for the country. And the real question is, why would a political party do that to this nation? I don't know. But they don't want a border, and they don't want enforcement of our federal immigration law. That is plain to see. We have a bill in front of us that funds everything except ICE. After what they put these ICE agents through on the street, after letting 8 to 10 million people in the country, and after providing a sanctuary jurisdiction for the bad guys who did what the leader just said in Chicago to this college student. That's what these guys want. That's what the country needs to understand, and that's what this election is about this fall. With that, I urge a yes vote for this legislation and yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I would suggest to the gentleman that he check with his staff. ICE has $85 billion. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Neguse.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 237 years ago, one of our founding fathers, John Adams, laid bare his greatest fear for our country, which is that in every assembly in Congresses like this one, members would gain influence not by sense, but by noise, not by greatness, but by meanness, not by learning, but by ignorance. Why am I quoting John Adams at 10 p.m., 10:30 on a Friday night? It's because this debate, the Judiciary Chairman's remarks, are emblematic of the reality, the cold, hard truth that John Adams' fears proved prescient. All we hear is noise from the other side. The kind of noise that expects the American people to believe that a bill that passed unanimously in the United States Senate somehow defunds the police. The kind of noise that expects the American people to believe that every conservative Republican U.S. senator passed a bill last night that defunds the police. That's their argument. The bill that the Senate passed, every conservative senator and every liberal one came to a consensus that the stalemate needed to end, that TSA agents needed to be paid, that FEMA needed to be funded. They passed that bill on a unanimous basis. The only reason we're not considering it is because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been captured by the far right wing of their party. It is shameful. We have an opportunity tonight to perhaps rise to the occasion and prove John Adams wrong. If a handful of Republicans, I'm not talking about 30 or 20 or 10, 3, vote to defeat the previous question.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
If 3 Republicans vote to defeat the previous question, we can take up the Senate bill tonight and TSA agents will be paid. Simple. It's time for our Republican colleagues to do the right thing. Defeat this bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the representative from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Madam. Mr. Speaker, reality sometimes hurts. The fact is that the Democrat leadership over a 4-year period let millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens, illegal persons into our country, along with it, tons of drugs and all kinds of human trafficking. Now they're arguing against deportations and doing their very best to create chaos and hope the American people allow them to blame it on President Trump and Republicans. Now, after the House has passed a bipartisan DHS funding bill, along with concession from the White House, good faith efforts from both chambers, Chuck Schumer still refused to take yes for an answer. The bill we received does not fund DHS. It sets border security operations and CBP at zero, quite intentionally, $0, which means day-to-day operations at Customs and Border Protection are not funded, explicitly attempting to open our southern border. Homeland Security investigations, which stop sex and child trafficking, is left out as well. Was that deliberate? Apparently so. For the second time within a year, TSA agents are working without pay, terrible for them and their families, and of course, as we see, to the traveling public. President Trump took action today, thankfully, to find a way to pay our TSA agents and allow our airports to run more smoothly. Now, we've got to do our job. The short-term CR that we have presented is far from perfect, but it keeps DHS running, our airports moving during Easter and Passover, heavy travel times, and as well, And as well, we have time now to work out a long-term, better plan and agreement. Look, let's do what's right for once. Let's do what's right tonight for the American people and try to stop the politics. Let's fund Homeland Security and end this quite deliberately created chaos. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, after listening to the gentleman, I didn't know that that Senate Republicans voted to open the southern border. I mean, Ted Cruz voted to open the southern border. Boy, that's something. Oh, I don't know. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to urge that we defeat the previous question. If we do, I will offer an amendment to the rule to adopt the Senate amendment to H.R. 7147, the bipartisan compromise bill that the Senate unanimously passed this morning to fund all law-abiding agencies under the Department of Homeland Security. This bipartisan, I know that's a tough word for some of you, but this bipartisan solution would make sure that TSA employees are paid, FEMA employees are paid, cybersecurity employees are paid, and our Coast Guard is paid. And if Speaker Johnson would just put the damn bill on the floor of the House for an up or down vote, we all know it would pass. That's what this motion does. It simply allows for a vote to adopt the compromise bill that just passed unanimously through the Republican-led Senate, instead of a vote on this Republican partisan 2-month crappy CR bill that we know will not become law. Now is the time to stand up against far-right extremism and take the deal. Let's have a vote on the Senate bill. And, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record, along with any extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
And to discuss our proposal, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
The bill we are debating tonight will never become law. It is dead on arrival, doomed. The Senate has gone home. They did their job. They worked together in a bipartisan way to negotiate, deliberate, and strike an agreement that passed unanimously out of the Senate chamber. Imagine. Democrats and Republicans said yes. How often does this happen? House Republican leadership refuses to bring it up for a vote because they know if they did, it would pass overwhelmingly. By blocking the Senate's agreement from receiving a vote, Republican leadership extends the shutdown. And that means another missed paycheck for federal workers. The Republican leadership position? Let us continue to withhold paychecks from TSA agents. Let us continue to force them to sleep in their cars, to continue to have to sell their plasma, to stay frightened to death of evictions. Republican leadership is doing this because they do not want to enact even the most fundamental constraints on ICE, a rogue, lawless, and reckless agencies. They want to allow them to continue harassing, beating up, and yes, even killing American citizens. They would rather prolong this shutdown, continue withholding paychecks from TSA workers, keep extending the lines at airport security, than enact a requirement that federal officers obtain a warrant from a judge before they kick in your front door or they pick you up on the street. Because they do not want to require independent investigations into egregious misconduct by ICE officers. They want to allow them to continue to detain and deport American citizens, allow them to go to sensitive locations like churches and hospitals and schools. They side with out-of-control federal agencies over the responsible, dedicated workers who keep air travel safe. Only yesterday, President Trump decided that he has the ability to pay these workers. If the White House believes they have the authority and the funds to pay these workers, then they have had this authority all along for the past 42 days. But what they chose to do was withhold the paychecks from TSA workers for political gain. It's shameful. ICE is funded Don't listen to them. They have $75 billion plus another $10 billion in the slush fund, and they can do whatever they want with it. Customs and Border Protection has $65 billion and another $11 billion in the Senate bill. Spare us the lies. The American people know exactly who is responsible for prolonging this shutdown. The TSA workers putting in yet another shift with no pay. They will know when they see Republican members hightailing it home.
I yield the gentlelady additional 1 minute.
Great.
Gentlelady's recognized for an additional minute.
The TSA workers putting in yet another shift with no pay will know when they see Republican members hightailing it home to enjoy their spring break. We have an opportunity to end this shutdown. And if we defeat that previous question, I'll offer an amendment to the rule to bring up the bipartisan bill passed unanimously by the United States Senate. If the House passed the bipartisan Senate agreement, I sincerely doubt, my friends, that the President of the United States would veto it. We can stop tonight. Stop the madness. Instead, Republican leadership is choosing to continue it for politics and political gain. It is shameful. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the representative from North Carolina.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I keep hearing about the need for bipartisanship, but I would just remind my colleagues across the aisle that just yesterday we voted for the 4th time to open the Department of Homeland Security, and that was a bipartisan vote where some of their colleagues decided to join us. But this is the second government shutdown that these Democrats have caused on the American people. This one, 42 days. That's how long the Democrats have dragged out their second government shutdown. And they have done this while refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Once again, they are showing the American people that their loyalties lie with criminal illegal aliens and not hardworking Americans. Democrats are gambling with the safety of our country, all to appease their woke, radical base. The American people were loud and clear, Mr. Speaker. They wanted secure borders. They wanted to deport criminal illegal aliens, and they wanted a government that prioritized their safety. Democrats are telling us exactly what they will do if they ever get the chance. They will reopen our borders. They will reopen the pipeline of deadly fentanyl at our southern border, and they'll endanger every American.
Time has expired.
I would yield 30 more seconds.
The gentleman's recognized for additional 30 seconds.
They will endanger every American with their reckless policies. People will die. Tonight, we are voting to do our jobs and to keep Americans safe despite our colleagues across the aisle continuing to do the opposite. Pay our TSA workers. Fund our immigration enforcement. It is not hard, Mr. Speaker. With that, I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, I just said to the gentleman from North Carolina, his 2 Republican senators, Mr. Tillis and Budd, didn't seem to have a problem. Maybe he should call them. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Stanton.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Ranking Member. We should have voted today. We should have voted yesterday, last week, last month to fund every Department of Homeland Security, but not more money for ICE without changes. That's what House Democrats are fighting for. And this morning, the Senate passed a bill unanimously to do just that. Every single senator, Democrat and Republican. Speaker Johnson called that Senate bill a joke. Let me tell you what's not a joke. Cybersecurity experts going without pay on the same day Iran hacked the director of the FBI, FEMA being dismantled in real time, TSA agents launching GoFundMe accounts to pay for gas and groceries. Instead of taking up the Senate bill, House Republicans are choosing to give even more money to Trump's mass deportation machine beyond the $75 billion slush fund they gave ICE last summer. No accountability, no oversight, no limits. Let's be clear about what's happening. DHS is shut down because Republicans are refusing to listen to the vast majority of the American people who want to see changes at ICE. I urge my colleagues to vote no. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the representative from West Virginia.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm listening to the other side of the aisle right now, and I want you to know what you're hearing right now. It's desperation. It's desperation because they are this close to their ultimate objective, which is defunding ICE, CBP, and HSI, which, by the way, they're going after the 300,000 unaccompanied minors you all let into this country that no one can find. That is what's going on here right now. This bill that the Senate has passed, I'm going to call it Hakeem's dream. That's what this bill is. It's Hakeem's dream, but it's America's nightmare. That's what this bill is. But this chamber here on this side of the aisle, we're not only saying no to that, we're saying hell no. We're not going to pass this. The Speaker of the House has stood up and said we're not going to take this anymore. We are going to fund ICE, CBP, HSI, and we're going to put a stop to the madness that has been going on in this country for far too long. It's time to make America safe again. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. The gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I want everybody to know the gentleman from West Virginia is saying hell no to paying TSA workers, FEMA workers, Coast Guard workers, CISA workers. Shame on you. And by the way, if you have some complaints about this bill, the gentleman from West Virginia should write his two senators, Justice and Capito, because they voted for this. I now yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Torres.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the U.S. House of Representatives is being used as a front for Republican-sponsored lawlessness. The Senate handed us a bipartisan deal to keep this country safe. But Speaker Johnson, shackled by his own extremism, called it a joke. You want to talk about a joke, Mr. Speaker? It is a joke that we are being asked to hand a blank check to an agency that has turned into a regime secret police. This is not border security, it is extortion. Republicans are holding the paychecks of hardworking TSA officers hostage to bankroll an agency that kidnaps U.S. children and dumps them across the borders, terrorizes our neighborhoods with zero accountability, and executes American citizens in cold blood. My constituents don't want stopgap cowardice. They want a government that doesn't terrorize them. We are not just debating a budget. We are debating... We are not just debating a budget. We are debating whether this House has the backbone to stand up to an administration that is addicted to cruelty. If members want to fund violence, do it on your own time, but do not do it with the blood and the tax dollars of hardworking American people. Bring the bipartisan Senate bill to the floor, stop the game, stop the sabotage, or get out of our way, because we will win these elections and we will take back America. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my colleague on the Rules Committee, the representative from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Let's be clear about why we're here. Our Democrat colleagues created a national crisis by purposely allowing millions of people into the United States in violation of our laws, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans. People like Jocelyn Dungare, whose mom I talked to today, who's watching what's happening here in real time. People like Laken Riley, people like Rachel Marin, tens of thousands of our children who died from fentanyl poisoning, all created by purposeful political decisions by the previous administration and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Now, we sit here today, and my colleagues falsely claim that CBP and ICE are funded. The fact is, first, line staff are being mostly funded by virtue of the One Big Beautiful Bill, but it leaves out civilian and support staff. That's the truth. It's factual truth. Today, we had a quote from one of them. It says, quote, "The Senate bill paid TSA, but thousands of CBP and ICE professional staff will not be paid. The last paid workday for me was February 13th. Now Senate on paid vacation until April 13th. That is a guarantee for 2 months, no pay. Very likely we won't be paid until May if Speaker Johnson let this bill pass." That's existing staff watching what we're doing in real time. Second, not one of my Democratic colleagues voted for the one big beautiful bill they are hiding behind right now, saying that the staff is paid. Not one. Last night, yes, there was a voice vote in the middle of the night. This comment that somehow there was massive votes in support of this bill is simply not true. There was a voice vote. The only, and I mean the only, barrier to getting funding for our law enforcement, our personnel and Border Patrol and ICE who are standing on the line to defend our country are 5 to 7 Democrats in the Senate who refuse to let the bill move through while allowing it to be filibustered at a 60-vote threshold. Sheridan Gorman is dead. A student at Loyola who was killed by Jose Medina, who's illegally president of the United States, who came in 2023. And this just happened. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle do not want ICE doing their job, do not want Border Patrol doing their job, and are right here today refusing to do the job of funding this fully. I stand with Speaker Johnson. I stand with my colleagues. We should stand with Border Patrol. We should stand with ICE, and we should defend the United States of America. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Minnesota reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I know the gentleman has a tough primary, but let me say, for the record, that none of us are hiding behind the big ugly bill. We would not vote for a bill that cut Medicaid by $1 trillion or cut SNAP by $200 billion, or we certainly wouldn't vote for a bill that would provide multi-year funding for ICE. I mean, that is just the reality. So you did that, and so there is funding for ICE. And I would just say to the gentleman, if he has a problem with this bill, he should check with his senators. Senator Cornyn, who is in the Republican leadership, and Senator Cruz, who, by the way, I think you work for. In any event, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
And still I rise, Mr. Speaker. And I rise tonight in the name of the TSA worker that made an appeal. I rise in the name of justice for the TSA workers. This worker said to me as I made my way through the airport, "Help us. We have families to feed. Help us. Fight for us." This bill does not help those workers. It's dead on arrival. The bill that can help the workers is the compromise bill that came out of the Senate. This bill is dead. The Senate bill lives, and it will help those workers. They have families to feed. They must put food on the table. This bill doesn't do it. It's the Senate bill. It's the compromise bill. You don't want compromise. You want capitulation. Democrats will not capitulate. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to close.
Gentlelady's prepared to close. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I yield myself the remaining time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this debate has not changed the basic facts one bit. There is a bill that can pass the House. There is a bill that can become law. There is a bill that can end this shutdown. And Speaker Johnson is refusing to bring it to the floor. That's the whole story. Republicans can dress this up however they want. They can hold all the conference calls they want. They can play all the procedural games that they want. None of it changes the truth. This shutdown is continuing because the Republican Speaker of the House is too weak to stand up to the extremists running his conference. And while Republicans can't seem to face reality in Washington, People all over the country are living with the consequences. The TSA agent worried about rent. The Coast Guard spouse trying to stretch a paycheck that is not coming. The FEMA worker left hanging. The family stuck in chaos at the airport because this Republican Congress cannot do its job. Now let me be clear. Those people are not pawns in some power struggle. They are not leverage. They are the people that we are supposed to serve. And still, Republicans are failing them. This CR isn't some serious answer. It's not. It's a joke. It's a joke. It is a plan to provide cover for a speaker who knows exactly what needs to be done, but does not have the guts to do it. We all know the Senate bill is the exit ramp. So take it, bring it up, pass it, end this mess. That is what responsible people would do. That is what a real speaker would do. That is what leadership is all about. Tonight, if this shutdown continues, the American people should remember this moment. They should remember that the solution was sitting right here, ready to go, ready for a vote, ready to pass. And one man, Speaker Mike Johnson, said no. Republicans, you own this. You own this. Every delayed flight, every missed paycheck, every family under stress, every hour of avoidable pain, this is a Republican shutdown. How dare you do this to the American people? People are tired of being jerked around. People are tired of being screwed over by your policies that favor the Epstein class at the expense of working people. And here we have a chance to help pay federal workers, to keep our government running in Homeland Security, and you say no. You say no. In the Senate, a unanimous vote. Every Republican senator went along with it. Not a single one of them objected. Even the most conservative right-wing senator did not object to it. And yet that's not enough for you. That is not enough for you. Shame on you. Shame on this institution for not rising to the moment. I urge defeat of the previous question, Mr. Speaker. I urge a defeat of this rule. This is a lousy process. Shame on Republicans, and I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself the balance of the time.
Gentlelady is recognized.
I rise today to close this debate with a clear and unwavering message to my colleagues across the aisle and across the rotunda. You cannot fund only half of our homeland security. There's been a lot of loud voices from the other side of the aisle, and I think they believe that the louder they speak, the more the American people will believe them. But the American people do understand that this CR makes sense. It funds everything, people get paid, and it allows more time to continue the discussion. This is the common sense thing to do. The proposal sent to us by the Senate in the dead of the night is not a solution. It's a Swiss cheese funding bill defined by its holes and deficiencies. While we all agree on the importance of protecting our airports, the Senate plans operates on the hope that we can secure our borders by using supplemental funds meant for construction and technology to cover basic operational needs. The current bill does not just ignore the border. It actively harms our border security infrastructure. It keeps our cybersecurity experts at CISA furloughed while adversaries target our networks. It leaves FEMA's disaster relief fund depleted and keeps our Coast Guard crews from training they need to operate in hazardous conditions. Our 60-day CR ensures that over 100,000 DHS employees receive paychecks. It ensures that investigations into drug trafficking, human smuggling, and child exploitation can commence. It ensures that our BioWatch systems remain active in over 30 major cities to warn us of bioterrorism attacks. The American people are tired of games. They do not want half security or partial funding. They want a government that protects them at the airport, at the hospital, and at the border. I urge my colleagues to stop holding our homeland defenders hostage, to push a radical open border agenda. Support this rule, support this CR, and let's get back to the business of securing the entire United States. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Gentlelady yields back. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of adoption of the resolution if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.